listening to the Blitz Boys podcast.
Hey, what's up? It's Kaiden Jenkins. I'm your host. You can find me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Kaiden Jenkins 2. You can also find my co-host, my cousin, at Dakota McIntosh 0 on the same platform. We're going to be discussing the outcomes of not today's games, but this week's games, week 10. First things first, we got the Panthers versus the Bears, and Bears beat them 16-13. Bryce Young, I don't know what he can do with that offense, man. There's really not a lot there for him, but I can only suspect that he's going to continue to grow and get a little bit better. Do you have any notes on there?
No, all I gotta say is just with like time and experience, hopefully he gets better. Hopefully he doesn't stay the same as he is throughout his years and stuff, or he'll just be a bust. But I see potential in him. He just needs to uh, coordinate with his offense and just get on the
I
same
mean,
page.
we all thought that Baker Mayfield was a bust, and then he goes to the
That's
Bucks
true.
and starts going off. So
Yeah.
maybe a change of scenery is in his future, and maybe that's what makes him do a little bit better. I'm not entirely sure, but as of right now, he's a rookie and he's looking like it. So, next game, we're going to go on to the Colts and the Patriots. The Colts, in a very low scoring game, scored 10 points and the Patriots scored 6. All I got to say is Bill Belichick is very frustrated.
Oh,
And Mac
yeah.
Jones, I did see he got benched for the 2-minute final drive. Bill O'Brien, I believe is his name, was all up in his face. So, not entirely sure if there's going to
Yeah.
be a change in quarterback or coaching, but all I can say is something needs to turn around for the Patriots. And as for the Colts, they just got to work on the small things,
I mean,
penalties, stuff like that, gaining yards, scoring touchdowns, the simple things.
yeah, what they really need is the Colts really need a quarterback, to be honest. And Mac Jones, he got benched because he had Hunter Henry wide open in the end zone, and he completely underthrew him. And I think it was an interception, and it was terrible. Like he was wide open,
Yeah.
would have been 6. They would have won the game.
Yeah. Into the next one here, we got the Packers and the Steelers. Steelers come out 23-19. Jordan Love completed 51% of his passes for 289 yards and 2 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. He's looking pretty serviceable, but I don't think he's the quarterback of the future for the Packers. Maybe for the short-term future, but not
Hmm.
long term. They got to figure something out there. And then also just figure out penalties. And yeah, it's just not looking too good for Jordan Love right now. I hope he can turn it around, but we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I mean, all of us really hope that he turns around. He's looked pretty good. He's been in. I feel like every single one of his games have been like tight to the end. Is like the last final quarter drives are what like everybody's looking for and who's gonna win. But on the Steelers, they did a good job. Their ground game is where they won the game. And personally, I feel like Jalen Warren is a much better running back than Najee Harris, and they need to start him and get him more carries.
I don't know, dude. They both had the same amount of touches, I believe. And Najee Harris wasn't too far behind him, and I believe he also scored a touchdown. So
Yeah.
I might be wrong, but Najee Harris, he's a good running back, but they got to figure out a good combo for them. One of them needs to be the short yardage, and one of them needs to be the explosive player. They can't just keep on swapping them out whenever they want to. They got to have a game plan for him, kind of like back in the day for Ezekiel Elliott and Pollard. Ezekiel Elliott was from the 20-yard line to the end zone, and also from the end zone to the 20-yard line, and then in between the 20s was Tony Pollard, and that really worked for them. So
Yeah.
they just got to find a good mixture on there. I believe you have a little bit of more notes on there for me.
Yeah, I do. I got some more stuff. I got Kenny Pickett. He's not good under pressure, and I feel like the reason they came out on top was because they established the run game earlier, and they had 100 rushing yards in the first half, and the the Packers just weren't able to keep up with them and stop that run, and so I feel like that's the reason they won that game.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you on there. And then also TJ Watt, he's looking pretty good this year.
Oh,
As
he's looking so
always.
good.
And I believe there was a game sealing interception in the end zone for that game.
hmm
On there, we'll move on to the 49ers game. That was a fun game if you like one sided offense.
Yeah.
Um, but on there, 49ers blow out the Jags 34-3. Um, could have saw that coming, but apparently I thought wrong. But we'll go into it. The 49ers look to be back on track, putting 34 points on a decent Jaguars defense. Brock Purdy had 296 yards and 3 touchdowns with no interceptions. George Kittle actually popped off. He had 3 catches with 116 yards and a touchdown. There was this one play where Brock Purdy was really tight in the pocket, and this was the defense. This was him when he threw it. And then as soon as he threw it, boom, stood in there, took that hit, man. Threw it up to George Kittle, and he burnt that defensive back and walked into the end zone. Literally, he like slowed down and walked into the end zone. He's got some swagger to him. The 49ers also had 5 sacks for the second time this year. Last time was in September against the Steelers.
Wow. Yeah, so one thing that the 49ers were trying to do but weren't successful at was getting Christian McCaffrey the a trip to the end zone to continue a 17 game touchdown streak. It would have been 18 if he would have got a touchdown, and it would have been a new NFL record, but he wasn't able to do it. And I think they are trying to focus too much on that late in the late in the game, and so their offense wasn't as dominant because they're just focused on that. I believe.
Yeah, they were just stat padding Christian McCaffrey, trying to get him that touchdown, and he deserved it. But
He did,
Jaguars
but
held off, so
yeah. And thing I have here in my notes is the Jags. They they really weren't able to get anything going against the 49ers defense. They finished off with 221 total yards. Uh, they needed to get that run game going because Travis Etienne only had 10 yards and 2 carries in the second half,
wow.
and they weren't able to get him the ball very much. They weren't able to run the ball at all, and so they were just focused more. The 49ers were focused more on the pass, and so that's why T. Law threw 2 interceptions. I feel like is because they were more dialed in on the pass because they weren't able to establish that run game at all.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you. On there, we're going to move on to your Saints versus the Vikings. Unfortunately, the
Oh,
Saints the Vikings beat the Saints
yeah,
27-19. Josh Jobs continues to blow minds. He had 268 yards. I know that's not a lot, but that's his second game in the offense.
yeah,
So he also had 1 touchdown and ran for 44 yards. TJ Hawkinson gathered 11 catches for 134 yards. He was the main target that game,
he
and
was.
he
Yeah.
he also scored a touchdown. Now I'm not going to speak too much on the Saints, but what I will say is when they don't use Taysom Hill, they lose.
Yep, that couldn't be even more any more true. So, what the main thing about the Saints is, they do not do well against mobile, agile quarterbacks. If they're able to get out of the pocket, scramble for some yards, they got some speed to them. The Saints have a hard time trying to contain them, and that's why in in the first half, Josh Dobbs had 6 carries for 40 yards and a touchdown. In the second half, they did better. They only held him to 44 yards, so they weren't able to run outside and scramble as much. But he was still able to extend plays out when he needed to, and he just looked great against the Saints defense. And it made me a little sad because Derek Carr went down in the third quarter with a concussion and a right shoulder injury
Oh,
after taking a huge hit. But he was able to pick up
yeah.
that first down. Then Jameis Winston came in, and I swear he just throws the ball up in praise. I swear. He threw two 50-50 touchdown passes, which one was to Chris Olave and the other one was to a rookie. It was his first touchdown pass. Sorry, I didn't catch the name of him, but it was 50-50. They just really just fought for the ball and just came down with it. And he tried to do it on the one of the last plays of the game or drives of the game and just threw it up, and the defense just intercepted it to stop the comeback.
Yeah, I'm just surprised that Jameis Winston went in over Taysom Hill. Taysom Hill is by far the better quarterback at this stage in both of their careers. Jameis Winston was very good back when he was in his prime, but he, like you were saying, he throws 50-50 balls a lot.
Hmm.
And Taysom Hill probably could have drained the clock and won them that game.
I agree. Yeah, he could have put down that final drive and just went out and scored, but who knows? We never know now. We'll never know.
Yep. And then we'll go ahead and stop making you talk about your Saints, even though they're a good team. They'll come back from it. So we're
Hopefully.
going to move on to the Bengals and Texans. So the Texans
Ooh.
beat Joe Burrow 30-27. CJ Stroud is putting up a MVP caliber season in his rookie year. In this game, he had 356 yards, one touchdown, also one interception, but that's his only second interception on the year. Devin Singletary, in his second stage of his career, is popping off 150 rushing yards and a touchdown. So
Yeah.
Texans came back and down the field and scored a game-winning field goal against the Bengals, and it was pretty close there for a little while. But C.J. Stroud just is a game-managing quarterback that also knows how to do it all. So he's got to work on some things. Obviously, it's his rookie year. I'm just hoping that next year he doesn't hit too much of a sophomore slump, but we'll just see how that goes. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I heard something. It was comparing him to Andrew Luck and Justin Herbert in their rookie years and stuff, and how they were doing really well and stuff. But the only thing that CJ Stroud has that the rest didn't was if they're like in a crisis, CJ Stroud is able to step up to the plate and battle into the games. Like sitting here, Joe Burrow, he had a good game. He definitely made a lot of mistakes and stuff that definitely could have gone the other way, but he was keeping them in there, trying to keep up with CJ Stroud. But CJ Stroud just kept pounding the nail in more and more until they do that final drive, went down and scored a field goal right as the clock hit zero because Joe Burrow did good. He threw for 347 yards, 2 touchdowns, but also 2 interceptions, and two of the Bengals receivers went over 100 yards. It was Jamar Chase and Tyler Boyd, and it was he played a really good game. but CJ Stroud just played a better game.
Yeah. Do you think Tyler Boyd is going to be catching a lot of footballs in this practice this week because of that dropped touchdown?
Yeah, I think he will. I think he's definitely going to be on the throwing machine, hands right up against it, and
Yeah.
putting it at max
Uh,
max speed.
yeah, I feel bad. That was a bad drop. It was just mostly a mental thing.
It
And
was.
that happens to everybody, but I just hope it doesn't lower his confidence because he's a good player.
Yeah.
He's the best wide receiver 3. I
Oh,
would have to
hands
say
down.
in the league.
Hands
Um,
down. Agree.
could definitely be a wide receiver 2 on some teams
I
and
could I could
maybe
argue
wide receiver
receiver
1,
one. Yeah.
yeah, on some other teams. I know the Giants are looking for wide receivers, so we'll go
Yeah,
on to
honest.
the Bucks and Titans. The Bucks dominate the Titans,
Yes,
20-6.
they did.
Will Levis disappoints many of his fans that he gained, especially me. I was really rooting for the rookie, and I hope he works it out. He went 19 for 39, missed 20 of his passes with 199 yards, 1 interception. Also, Derrick Henry, I don't know if he's just getting old or what, but he was unable to get hot this game. He only rushed for 24 yards on 11 carries,
Whoa.
averaging just 2.1 yards per carry. So
Oh my
I don't know
goodness.
what's going on, but I'm sure they'll sort some things out, whether or not they'll decide on what they need to do.
Yeah, and just like the Titans, the Bucks weren't able to get that running game going as well. I mean, they had a little bit more success because they had 77 total rushing yards, but they definitely made up for it in the pass game. Baker Mayfield was able to find Mike Evans a lot of the time. Baker Mayfield threw for 263 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception, but everyone makes some mistakes every once in a game. Depends if you get lucky or not. Then Mike Evans, he had 143 yards and was one of those touchdowns. So he was in on the game. He was his man to go to.
Yeah, I saw one play that um, it's blanking quarterback name Baker Mayfield.
Big
I saw one play that he made, and he wouldn't have made this play 2 years ago. There was pressure in his face. I think it was a designed screen play, and rather than just throwing it away with pressure in his face, he stood there, took a hit, delivered the ball to Rashad White. I don't think I'm saying his name right, but
I think that's how you say it. I'm pretty sure that's how you say it.
yeah, and then pass it to White, and I believe he went for quite a few yards. I think it might have been 73. I'm not entirely sure. With all the games we watch, it's hard to keep up, but
It is.
scored a touchdown on that play, and Baker Mayfield would not have made that play 2 years ago. He would have threw the ball away or taken a sack. So see a lot of improvement there, and I would have to say it's due to the quarterback coach.
Hmm.
He coached Brady. He's helping coach Baker Mayfield. I'm not comparing Baker Mayfield to Brady because I won't ever be able to do that. But Baker
Baker
Mayfield
Mayfield better
is
than Brady? Question mark.
no, 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 no. uh,
You heard it
Baker
here
Baker
first.
May Baker Mayfield is he's looking pretty good. Couple things he needs to work on, but he's looking better than he has. So on there, we're gonna move on to the Lions and Chargers. Lions 41,
Ooh.
Chargers 38. It's a very high scoring game with a combined 79 points. The Lions won with a walk-off field goal. Goff had 333 yards, 2 touchdowns, and the rushing attack went off, dude. This
Oh
game
my
had
gosh.
this game they had 200 total rushing yards, led by David Montgomery back off of injury. He rallied 116 yards and 1 touchdown, and a little bit behind him was Jamar Gibbs for 77 yards, but he had 2 touchdowns. They won this game because of the dual threat of passing versus rushing the football. And also, Dan Campbell's just a goat. He's turning into one of those really good coaches.
Yeah, no, that was couldn't have said that better. They were able to get it done through the air and on the ground. And one thing that really surprised me is that in this game there was 0 sacks. The O lines on both ends were getting it done down in the trenches. They're winning the battles on the offensive side. The Chargers came up short, but had like an outstanding passing game with 323 yards, 4 touchdowns, and an interception. The run game wasn't as effective as the Lions was. They had 99 rushing yards, with 67 of that being from Austin Eckler, which I believe is the reason they didn't come out on top, because they weren't able to get the run game established like the Lions game. And I know I say that a lot. I'm a really big like down in the trenches, fight for them yards, running people. But I
Yeah,
personally feel like that's where you win the games, is down there running the football.
yeah, I would have to agree with you. I know I said Austin Eckler was going for 3 touchdowns, but I mean, I don't know if this was a coaching or coordinator mishap on the game plan. I'm not one to bash
That's
any
a movie, right?
coordinators or anything. But I would have to say Austin Eckler, if you guys are wanting to win, you have to get him going. Every time you
Mhm.
guys win, he has at least 1 touchdown and is over the 80-yard mark on total yards. So he
Mhm.
just needs to get the ball. Find ways to get him the ball, whether or not it's a screen pass, or running the ball, or what they plan on doing. But get Austin Eckler the ball, then I believe they should start winning some of these games. Now, this game had almost no defense, like you were saying, no sacks. I don't know if that's because of the O lines or because of the defenses, but I would have to say that's pretty surprising. 0 sacks on there.
Yeah.
But we're going to move on to the Cardinals and Falcons. The Cardinals scored 25. Falcons scored 23. This was another game decided by a field goal. Kyler Murray is finally back from his injury. He didn't do the best, but he looked better than I was expecting. In his first game back, he had 249 yards passing, with 33 rushing yards and a touchdown. I'd only expect him to get better as he gets a little bit healthier, as well as
Mhm.
James Conner. It was his first week back from injury as well. He rallied 73 yards, uh, and they just need to get a little bit healthier, and I think they should have a pretty good football team. Now, I don't think they're going to make a deep push into the playoffs or anything, but they should have a pretty decent football team going forward, and they can build off of that.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And one thing is the Falcons could not get it going on for passing. They had 70 passing yards throughout the whole entire game. The only thing that was keeping them in the game was their run. They had 184 total rushing yards. 95 yards came from Bijan Robinson with a touchdown. He had 22 carries, but they weren't able to get that passing game going. They're only grinding it down in the trenches and everything, but they just weren't able to distribute the ball and be effective.
Yeah, I just don't like how they're using Bijan Robinson.
Yeah.
they were using him good the first couple times. Now they have him returning punts. He should not be returning punts. He is going to be
No.
he's going to be your running back of the future, whether you like it or not. And if you don't like it, you can send him somewhere else because he is a good player. But I would have to say that I'm not sure if it's what's going on there, whether or not it's a health issue or a coaching
Mm-hmm.
or even a confidence issue. But they need to decide on a quarterback. They can't just start one week and the other week. That's not how you play football. You got to pick one and stick with them because if you stick with somebody, they're going to build their confidence up and start scoring you some points.
Yeah, no, couldn't be more true about that. I mean, they're doing well, like distributing, like throwing him the ball and stuff. He was able to make big plays happen when they needed it, but they're just not really. They're not really giving him the chance anymore.
Yeah. All right. And the next one, we're going to go into my Cowboys. They bullied the Giants to a 49-point game, and the Giants had 17. Now, a lot of those points came in the fourth quarter. Dak Prescott only played 3 quarters. Keep that in mind when I'm telling you these stats. So, um, all game, they had 640 total yards. They averaged 8.3 yards per play, per snap. That's crazy. 8.3 yards. It's unheard of. They had 7 total touchdowns. The Cowboys stopped the Giants in that end zone 86% of the time. Dak Prescott continues to build on his potentially MVP stat-like season. We got to see some more from him in order to deem that as true. But as of right now, he's looking pretty good. He had 404 passing yards, 4 touchdowns, a 74.3
Wow.
completion percentage. And keep in mind, that was all in 3 quarters. He did not play the fourth quarter. Cooper Rush came in.
Whoa,
Yeah.
that's insane.
And he also had a 138.3 passer rating and a 10-yard rushing touchdown. So in total, Dak Prescott scored 5 touchdowns in 3 quarters. So that's pretty good on my books. Then I would have to say CeeDee Lamb is sticking it to Marshawn Lynch. Marshawn Lynch told CeeDee Lamb, not to his face, but on a podcast, I believe, that he was not a bona fide number one wide receiver. With this game, CeeDee Lamb is the first NFL wide receiver to ever record 150 yards receiving in 3 consecutive games. And that was ever since he said that on that podcast. In this game, he had a 14-yard jet sweep for a touchdown. And then he had 151 receiving yards. At the end, they threw him the ball, I think, 3 times just to get him over that 150-yard mark to get him that record. And I really appreciate that because it's just another one of those punch in the face that I can use.
It's just kind of
But
like what they're trying to do with McCaffrey.
yeah, and then he also had a touchdown as a receiving touchdown as well. Um, the Cowboys finally used Brandon Cooks how they should have been using him all year, and that is on deep crossing routes. And they actually threw him the football. Believe it or not, they threw him the football. Earlier in the year, they were not throwing Brandon Cooks the football, and everybody was complaining about it. This game, Dak Prescott was hearing the rumors. He was like, okay, I'm going to throw him the football. Threw him the football, 173 yards and 1 touchdown.
Ooh, that's insane.
The Giants, now, I know this is all crazy stats and everything, and the Giants are beat up, but at the same time, you can't say that the Cowboys aren't good or whatever because the good teams beat up on bad teams, and that is exactly what the Cowboys did. Um, they're looking good. I'm pretty optimistic about the rest of the year. But I would have to say, if we have to work on one thing, that is going to have to be penalties. We did a lot better this week on penalties, and Terrence still really stepped up to the plate and cleared up his 4 sack game he had last week. Um, just looking pretty good. They got to start getting Tony Pollard a little bit more involved, but I think they finally found out who to use as that Ezekiel Elliott role filler, and his name is Rico Dowdle. He's going to be taking on those snaps as the in between short yardage and try to get Pollard back to his explosive self. So I believe you had some notes on the Giants. I'm done bragging.
No, brag all you want. I mean, this is like a statement win too, because believe it or not, NFL and stuff, good team, bad team, whatever team, they're still professionals.
Yeah,
Like having a win like this is insane. And it just shows you how good a team really is. But anyways, for the Giants, there's not really much to talk about with them just because the Cowboys did such a good job with them. They had 172 total yards throughout the whole entire game. They had 61 passing and 111 rushing. Saquon got 66 yards, and the Giants were 0 for 12 on third down conversions, but they were 2 for 3 on fourth downs. The Cowboys managed to win by that big of a margin. Like I said, they're professionals and stuff, so they're really good players. Personally, I feel like the worst team in the NFL would crush the best team in college football. Personal
yeah,
opinion, but that's my 2 cents in that. But the Cowboys were able to win by that margin, even though they gave up 9 penalties for 83 yards, and the Giants only had 2 penalties for 5 yards. And normally, if you don't win that penalty game, you don't win at all. But
yeah.
this is one of those cases where the
And
team just
also,
dominated.
I'm just going to say something really quick. I have to get it off my chest. The Giants have not closed the gap between them and the Cowboys. Earlier this offseason, multiple people were picking the Giants over the Cowboys to win the division. The Cowboys, I believe, week 1, they had how many points to 0?
40. It was
40 to
40 to
0.
0. Yeah.
And now in this game, 49 to 17. And I don't want to hear about injuries or anything like that because part of closing that gap is building depth. If you don't have depth, you're not going to win. So all I'm
Very
gonna
true.
all I'm gonna have to say is you guys did not you guys didn't close that gap. Better luck next year. We'll see how that goes. Do you have anything else to say about this game?
Nice job. That's all I gotta say.
All right, and then we'll move on to another NFC East game. It was the Commanders versus the Seahawks. Seahawks won this game 29-26. Just came to a field goal again. A lot of games this week. Sam Howell looks to be the Commanders' QB going forward. We'll keep an eye on him, see how he does. He hasn't won me over yet as a quarterback, a franchise quarterback. Um,
hmm
if he does
Yeah.
not turn out to be a franchise quarterback, I could see him bouncing around the league to back up or even start for teams that just don't have a quarterback at that point. But other than that, Sam Howell looks like he's doing pretty good there. So,
Yeah, and I know you're not a big Geno Smith. I know you're not hopping on that wagon, but in this game, he was the reason they won this game. because the Seahawks had 489 total yards, and Geno had 369 passing with 2 touchdowns.
I mean, everybody has a good game every now and again, right? All I'm saying is, how long is it going to last?
Yeah, that's a very fair question to ask. I mean, he seems to be doing really well. He did well last year. He's not doing as well as he did this year as he did last year, but in this game, they're able to protect Geno. He got sacked once, but it wasn't for any yards at all. But Sam Howell was sacked 3 times for 24 yards.
Yeah.
And it's a
And
big thing in games.
with all of that, they still only won by 3.
They did. Yeah, no.
I mean, I can't say that Geno Smith is a great quarterback. I just can't say it because it's very, very unpredictable. You never know what's going to happen with Geno. I would say he's a better quarterback than I am, for sure. For sure.
Anybody
But,
is.
hey. But I would have to say he's serviceable, but he's not going to be their quarterback going forward forever because he's old. They got to figure something out, and Drew Lock is not that answer. So I don't know if they're gonna keep on just signing old veterans and hope for the best, or if they're gonna try to develop a young guy. But all I can say is he's not gonna be your quarterback of the long future, maybe the near future. But other than that, we'll go on to the Jets versus Raiders. The Raiders scored 16 points, the Jets 12. Devontae Adams looks a little bit happier with Aiden O'Connell. Sorry about that. Aiden O'Connell throwing him the ball. Now, Aiden has some things to work on. He's a rookie. He didn't have too many yards or anything like that, but he was trying to get Devontae Adams the ball, and Devontae Adams respects that because he knows that he is one of the best players on the team. When he gets the ball, they have a better chance at winning. So I would have to say Aiden O'Connell just needs to work on some minor things and try to get out of that rookie slump. But I would have to say the coaching changes is one of the best decisions that the Raiders have made since signing Devontae Adams. Um, Alec Pierce just looks like he's a natural leader. The guys really like him, and so I think he's going to be their coach going forward.
Yeah, and I'm going back to what you said about Devontae Adams being one of the best players on the field. I think he is the best player on that offense. I believe
Yeah,
he's better than
offense.
Josh Jacobs. Yep, offense.
Offense.
I said offense, not team.
Hold on. Before you get started, I forgot to mention Max Crosby.
Ooh, beast of a dude.
Max Crosby. He's not getting enough recognition. I am putting him up there with Nick Bosa, Myles Garrett,
respectable.
Micah Parsons.
Oh, almost forgot your Cowboy.
T.J. Watt, and Max Crosby. I'm not putting this in any specific order. It could go either way.
I'd probably put Myles Garrett there too.
I thought I said him, but
you might have.
Either way, if you have one of those players on your team, your defense is automatically good. And
yeah,
I'm not
100%.
putting them in any specific order. We'll see how the rest of the year goes, but I'm going to end it on this. Max Crosby.
Well said, I will say. Going into some of the Jets stats and stuff, Zach Wilson looked a little better than he did last week. He got rid of the ball when he needed to, because I remember last week he just held onto the ball, took sack after sack. He only got sacked 2 times for 6 yards. He threw the ball for 263 yards, and one of those he just threw up on the final drive, get that game-sealing interceptions. He led the Jets in rushing yards with 54 rushes on 4 carries, and Brees Hall, I'm sorry, had 13 carries for 28 yards. Their their passing their pass defense was outstanding as usual, only giving up 126 yards in the air. I mean, their passing defense is phenomenal. Um, I if they had like a person like Max Crosby on their defensive line, I think maybe their run game may be a little more stout too.
Yeah. I would have to say, did you see Aaron Rodgers' face when Zach Wilson threw that ball up?
I didn't know. I didn't see his
Well,
face.
if you see any of those clips, get back to me because that looked like a dad being disappointed in his
Dis-
son.
well, he Zach Wilson's been like following him around,
Oh,
asking
I
him
know.
questions
I know. He's
and
been like
everything.
a little puppy dog.
Yeah,
um, Also, another thing that I saw regarding the Jets, Aaron Rodgers is expected to be back in December.
that's when he's wanting to get back. He wants to be back mid-December.
Yep.
I
I
I'm
don't
not
know if
too sure
I don't
about
know if the coaches
it.
will allow it, but that's when he wants to come
Yeah.
back. Now, after tearing your Achilles, that
That's what
is
I'm saying.
insane.
That's
When
He tore like 2 months ago, and he's
yeah,
already talking about going back and throwing the ball, playing physical football. Like,
yeah.
oh, that's debatable. Like, what are you taking? What are you taking?
All right, we got to get back into this last segment here. We're running a little bit low on time, so the Broncos beat the Bills
Ooh,
24-22. Amazing game. It was a sloppy game for sure.
very
Um,
sloppy.
this game was decided by a field goal as well. 6 game winning field goals this week is the most in NFL history. 6 game
Yep.
winning field goals. That's crazy. Um, Now, this was a sloppy game. Russell Wilson looks like he might be trending back to looking like his old self.
Hmm.
Now, I'm not going to go into the stats or anything. I'm just going to go into one specific play where I saw a glimpse of old him. So there was this play. They snapped the ball. He sensed pressure, right? So
Hmm.
he drifts to his right a little bit, rolls to his right, and then he senses pressure by a defensive lineman on his right. So he starts rolling left, senses pressure on his left, and starts rolling backwards, man. And he threw the pass while moving backwards, almost full speed, as fast as you can move backwards. Kind of like a fadeaway 3-point shot, you know what I mean? And
Off his
he
back
threw
foot.
that ball up. Yeah, he threw that ball up, and it looked like it was in the air for 3 seconds.
Oh,
And the only person
yeah.
able to get to it was Cortland Sutton. Now, Cortland Sutton might have made the catch of the year for toe
Yeah.
dragging wise. Um, he Cortland Sutton came around, and you see him look up, and he's like, "Oh, there's the ball. I can get it. I can reach it." He reaches it, and then catches it, and then the official says, "No, no score." They review it just to see Cortland Sutton by a blade of grass be inbounds by a
Yeah.
blade of
Yeah.
grass with his right foot just dragging across the ground so pretty like, and just to call it a touchdown, man. That was a very, very cool play to watch, and just brought me back to watching Russell Wilson back when in his prime. um, I would also have to say that could potentially be the play of the week. You're going to see that one on replay. Williams ran hard in the second half. He had
Oh, he
79
did.
yards and 1 receiving touchdown. It looked like he was a different player in that second half.
Yep.
But yeah, I'll let you go ahead and talk about the rest of it. Take us home.
Yeah, I gotta go back on you say maybe catch of the week and stuff. I mean, yeah, it was a touchdown pass, but CeeDee Lamb, that one-handed grab while being one arm being held. I mean, I think that's
I
gotta
would.
be probably catch of the week. That was
I,
impressive.
I was already talking my boys up a lot. I didn't want to get scrutinized for going into that. I mean, that's gonna have to. I'm talking toe drag. That's the toe drag of the week.
Yeah, no, that was
Catch a
phenomenal,
catch
making
a
sure he was in bounds.
yeah. Catch of the week has to go to CeeDee Lamb with his
Hmm.
left hand, non-dominant hand, while being held. Just that was pretty.
Oh, it was gorgeous.
Anyways,
All right, let's see here. All right, so Josh Allen, he hasn't been looking good this year. I'm not gonna lie. He hasn't been putting up any big numbers, but he's super confident, which is what makes him such a dangerous quarterback. Like he throws the ball into like tight pockets and stuff, and he can make plays, but recently those plays have not been going his way, and they've been like interceptions. His receivers been dropping the balls. I mean, he just hasn't been looking like his old self this year, and they got it. They started getting it done in on the ground because wasn't really able to get it done through the air. James Cook went for 12 carries for 109 yards, and Latavius Murray went for 9 carries for 68 yards and a touchdown. And the reason they lost that game wasn't the sole purpose of like the run game or like because they're running it, they're doing well passing the ball, but it was just the turnovers. They weren't able to keep the ball.
yeah,
Josh Allen threw 2 interceptions and they had 2 fumbles. So that's 4 turnovers all game. And it was really sloppy, and they honestly, I feel like, just gave the Broncos that game. The Broncos should have won by so much more, but they just weren't able to execute off those turnovers.
yeah,
But they kind of handed it to them. I'm not gonna lie. And Russell Wilson, he looked amazing, like you said. He was looking like he was back in Seattle playing. He threw for 178 yards, which isn't that isn't too much, but he went 24 for 29, which is an 82.8% completion rating with 2 touchdowns, and that's just awesome. That's what we
yeah.
like to see. He's on the uprise. Maybe Sean Payton is a good fit for this Broncos team, but I think they're starting to get it done. They're starting to figure out their team, and I feel like the Bills just need to figure out ball security. That's what they need to work on the most.
Yeah. I would have to agree with you with Russell Wilson looking like his old self. Like I was saying earlier. Now the 178 yards, that's not his fault. Receivers were just getting
Mm,
tackled as soon as they caught the ball.
yeah.
Um,
Yep.
so there wasn't really any yards after the catch or anything like that. So basically, the 178 yards is all Russell Wilson. Not a lot of that came after
100%.
the catch. So when you start talking about quarterbacks throwing for all these yards, now a lot of them, yes, they throw for a lot of yards. But when you throw a 2 yard pass and it goes for 74 yards for a touchdown, that
Hmm.
wasn't all you. That was a team effort. So the
Yeah.
178 yards was mostly just Russell Wilson.
It was Russell
And
Wilson and the O
yeah,
line
yeah,
and the receivers making that catch. That was it.
yeah. But with that, we're gonna end the episode. I, thanks for tuning in to the Blitz Boys podcast. We'll catch you on the next episode where we predict the Week 11 scores and outcomes and all that. And stay tuned. We'll be releasing that on Thursday. Once again, I'm Kaiden Jenkins. I'm your host. This is Dakota McIntosh. You can find us on X, formerly known as Twitter, um, at Kaiden Jenkins 2 and Dakota McIntosh 0. With
Yes,
that,
sir.
I believe we're all finished up. So everybody have a great rest of your day. Happy Veterans Day, and
Yeah.
on to the next one.
We'll see you guys next week.
All right, deuces.
See ya.